I was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 years ago. At the time, I thought my husband was the reason I survived. Now I know he was just very good at pretending. My name is Emma, I'm 38 years old, and I've been married to my husband Daniel for 14 years. We have 2 children. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I remember sitting in the doctor's office with Daniel beside me. The doctor was explaining my treatment options: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. I barely heard any of it. I was staring at the floor, trying to understand how my life had changed in one appointment. Daniel was the one asking questions. How serious was it? What were my chances? How long would treatment take? What would happen if the cancer spread? He looked terrified. At least that's what I thought. On the drive home, he held my hand. He told me we were going to get through it together. He told me I was going to be okay, and I believed him. For the next year, my life became hospital appointments, medications, chemotherapy, surgeries, and trying to act normal for my children. Daniel seemed perfect. He drove me to appointments. He took care of the kids. He cooked. He sat beside me during chemotherapy. When I was too sick to get out of bed, he brought me water and made sure I took my medication. Everyone told me how lucky I was. One of my friends even said, "Daniel is incredible. I don't know how you would get through this without him." I agreed. I used to tell people that I didn't know what I would have done without him. I thought he was taking care of me because he loved me. I didn't know that, behind my back, he was telling people a completely different story. I found out about the affair completely by accident. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel wasn't home, and I needed to take my medication. Usually, he was the one who prepared everything for me. My pills, my water, the little plastic container he kept beside my bed so I wouldn't have to get up more than necessary. But that afternoon, I was alone. I was already feeling weak, so I didn't want to walk all the way to the kitchen. I knew Daniel kept my medication in the black bag he brought with us to my appointments. So I reached for it. I opened the bag and started looking for my pills. That's when I found the phone. Not Daniel's regular phone. A different one. I had never seen it before. It was tucked underneath a folder containing my medical records. I remember just staring at it for a few seconds. I didn't even know he had another phone. That was the first thing that made me feel uneasy. Not panic, not suspicion exactly. Just a strange feeling that something wasn't right. Daniel had never mentioned having a second phone, and I couldn't think of any reason why he would need one. Then I turned it on. It was locked. I tried my birthday first. Wrong. Then Daniel's. Wrong again. I tried our anniversary. Still wrong. I stared at the screen for a moment. Daniel wasn't complicated when it came to passwords. He used the same one for almost everything. His email, his laptop, our streaming accounts. He hated having to remember different passwords. So I started thinking, what date did he use for everything? Then I thought about our daughter. Her birthday? Daniel used that date for almost everything. I entered the date. Wrong. I tried it again, this time using a different combination. The phone unlocked. I stared at the screen. For a second, I felt relieved. It was a stupid reaction, but I think I was just happy to see something familiar. Our daughter's birthday. Something that belonged to our family. I didn't know yet that the phone had nothing to do with our family. I opened the phone and started looking through it. There wasn't much on there. No social media accounts, no photos, no emails. When I opened the contacts, the only contact saved in the phone was a woman's name. Lauren. I knew that name. She had gone to the same high school as Daniel and me. She was actually someone Daniel had dated before we got together. Nothing serious. At least, that's what I had always been told. I remembered her. I had met her a few times back then. She was just someone from our past. Someone who had disappeared from our lives. Or so I thought. I opened the messages. The oldest conversation was from 5 years into our marriage. Daniel had apparently reconnected with her. At first, the messages were harmless. They talked about school, old friends, people they used to know. Then the messages became more frequent and more personal, and eventually they crossed a line. I kept scrolling. The affair had started years before my cancer diagnosis. That was the first thing I realized. I had been sick for a little over 3 years, but Daniel and Lauren had been having an affair long before that, which meant the cancer hadn't caused him to cheat. He had already been cheating on me. I was just the last person to know. I found messages where they talked about meeting at hotels, restaurants, places I had never heard of. Daniel would tell me he was working late, or meeting a friend, or helping someone from work, and then he would go see her. I read everything. I didn't know how long I sat there, but eventually I found the messages from around the time I was diagnosed. That's when I stopped thinking about the affair. Because the things Daniel said about me were worse. A message from Lauren said, "How is she doing?" Daniel replied, "Still sick." That was it. Still sick. As if I was an inconvenience. Lauren asked, "Is the treatment helping?" Daniel replied, "Who knows?" Then, "She acts like every little thing is the end of the world." I stared at the screen. I was going through chemotherapy, constantly nauseous, exhausted, and barely recognized myself after losing my hair. And Daniel was telling his mistress that I was being dramatic. I kept reading. Lauren asked him, "Are you still attracted to her?" There was a long gap between the messages. Then Daniel replied, "Honestly, I already knew I didn't want to read the answer. But I did." He wrote, "Not really." Then, "Not after everything." Lauren asked, "Because of the surgery?" Daniel replied, "Partly." Then, "She doesn't even look like the same person anymore." I felt my hands start shaking. I kept scrolling. Lauren asked him if he felt bad saying that. Daniel replied, "I feel bad that she has cancer." Then, "But I'm not going to lie and pretend it hasn't changed things." For months, I had been trying to adjust to the changes in my body and accept that I didn't look the way I used to. And all that time, the man who was supposed to make me feel that way was secretly telling another woman that my body disgusted him. Then I found a message from after my surgery. Lauren had asked, "How was she?" Daniel replied, "She cried for hours." Then, "She keeps asking me if I still think she's beautiful." I stopped reading. I remember putting the phone down. I couldn't breathe properly, because I knew exactly what he had told me. I remembered that night. After my surgery, I remember lying in bed crying and asking Daniel if he still found me attractive. I asked him if he looked at me differently now. He held my face in his hands and told me, "Of course not." He had told me, "You're still beautiful to me." He had kissed my forehead. I remembered believing him. But according to the messages, the moment he left the room, he had texted Lauren, "She keeps asking if I still find her attractive." Lauren replied, "What did you say?" Daniel wrote, "What do you think I said?" Then, I told her what she wanted to hear. I stared at that sentence for a long time. I told her what she wanted to hear. I continued scrolling. The messages got worse. Daniel complained about everything: the appointments, my medication, taking care of the children, and how exhausted he was. One message said, "Everything in this house revolves around her now." Lauren replied, "Because she's sick." Daniel said, "I know." Then, "That doesn't mean I have to like it." I had no problem admitting that caring for someone with cancer was difficult. I knew it was hard for him. I knew he was tired. Our lives had changed, and I understood that. But I thought he was doing all of this because he loved me, because he wanted to be there for me. I didn't know that every time he drove me to the hospital, he was later complaining to another woman about how inconvenient my illness was. Then I found a conversation from the week I started chemotherapy. Lauren had asked, "Are you going to be there with her?" Daniel replied, "Of course." She said, "Why?" His answer was, "Because if I don't, everyone will know what kind of person I am." I read that message several times. He wasn't beside me because he wanted to be. He was beside me because he was afraid of what people would think if he wasn't. And then I found the message that completely destroyed the image I had of him. Lauren had asked, "Do you think she is going to die?" Daniel replied, "Probably not." I almost felt relieved. Then I read the next message. He wrote, "But if she does, it would solve a lot of problems." I put the phone down. I stood up. Then I sat back down. I couldn't understand what I had just read. The man who had held my hand during chemotherapy had written that my death would solve his problems. I kept scrolling. Lauren asked, "What kind of problems?" Daniel replied, "Everything." I felt sick. And then I saw something about life insurance. Lauren had written, "Did you ever get the policy?" Daniel replied, "Yes." I froze. I had never known about a life insurance policy. I kept reading. Lauren asked, "How much?" Daniel replied, $750. I knew exactly what he meant. $750,000. Then Lauren wrote, "And you're the beneficiary?" Daniel replied, "Obviously." I sat on the floor with the phone in my hand. I couldn't even cry. I just stared at the screen. For months, I had been fighting to survive. And my husband had secretly taken out a $750,000 life insurance policy on me. Then I found another message. Lauren had written, "That's a lot of money." Daniel replied, "It's not about the money." I almost laughed. Then he continued, "Well, not only about the money." I had to put the phone down again. I was shaking so badly that I could barely hold it. I found the policy later. I knew exactly where to look. Daniel had hidden it in a folder in the back of his desk. The policy had been taken out 2 months after my diagnosis. He had never told me. I photographed every page. Then I put everything back. I still didn't confront him. I couldn't. Not yet. because I was beginning to realize that the affair was only one part of this. Daniel had been lying to me for years. He had been cheating on me before I got cancer. Then when I got sick, he had used my illness to make himself look like a hero. He was the perfect husband, the devoted caregiver, the man who never left my side. But behind my back, Daniel was telling Lauren that my body disgusted him, that I was too needy, and that my cancer had ruined his life. He told her he was only staying because people would judge him if he left, and that if I died, he would have everything. I kept reading, and then I found out he had been talking about me to other people too. Not just Lauren, his friends, his coworkers, even people I knew. He had told one of his friends, "She doesn't even look like my wife anymore." Another message said, "I can't even have a normal marriage." He complained that I was always tired, that I didn't want sex, and that I needed help with things I used to do on my own. I was going through chemotherapy, and he was angry that I wasn't acting like a normal wife. One message made me physically sick. Lauren had asked, "Do you still sleep with her?" Daniel replied, "Are you kidding?" Then, "She has one breast now." I stared at that message. I couldn't read anything after it. I had spent months trying to accept my body. I had looked in the mirror and cried, wondering if Daniel would still want me. And all that time, he had been making jokes about me behind my back. I believed his kindness. I believed him when he reassured me and told me I was still beautiful. Now I wondered if he had only said those things because he knew they were exactly what I needed to hear. The next morning, Daniel came into the bedroom. He kissed me. He asked if I had slept well. Then he asked if I needed anything before he left for work. I looked at him. For the first time in 14 years, I saw exactly who he was. A stranger. I said, "No, I'm fine." He smiled. Then he left. I waited until his car disappeared from the driveway. Then I went back to the phone. I didn't confront him. I kept reading. Daniel had been complaining about my cancer from the beginning. The appointments, chemotherapy, surgeries, medication. He hated that our entire life had started revolving around me. One message said, "Everything in this house is about her now." Lauren replied, "She has cancer." Daniel wrote, "I know. That doesn't mean I have to enjoy watching my life disappear." A few messages later, Lauren asked, "Do you still love her?" "No." The answer was immediate. "I haven't loved her for years." "Then why are you still there?" "Because she has cancer." Lauren replied, "You could leave and look like the man who abandoned his wife while she was sick?" "No." Then he added, "I can't leave a woman with cancer." Lauren asked, "So what are we supposed to do?" Daniel replied, "Wait." I kept scrolling. A few months after my surgery, Lauren asked him, "Do you even want to be with me anymore?" "Of course I do." "Then why are you still pretending to be her husband?" "Because she's still here." Lauren replied, "That's horrible." Daniel answered, "What's horrible is that she keeps surviving." I stopped reading for a moment. Then I continued. Lauren asked, "Do you actually want her to get better?" Daniel didn't reply immediately. A few minutes later, he wrote, "No." Then, "I want her to stop suffering." Lauren replied, "That's not what I asked." Daniel wrote, "I want her to die." Then he sent another message. "I want her to die so I can finally be with you." I saved the conversation. Lauren replied, "Daniel," he wrote, "don't act like you don't want the same thing. Then, once she's gone, I'll have the house, the money, and the kids taken care of. And we can finally be together." That was when I understood. Daniel wasn't preparing for the possibility of losing me. He was waiting for me to die. Lauren asked, "What if she survives?" Daniel replied, "Then I guess I'm stuck." I kept scrolling until I found the conversation about the insurance policy. "Did you get the policy?" "Yes. $750K. And you're the beneficiary?" "Obviously." "She doesn't even know." "She won't know if she doesn't ask." Then, "Honestly, if she dies, I have everything." I put the phone back in the bag, exactly where I had found it. Then I started looking for everything else. The insurance policy wasn't the only thing Daniel had kept from me. There was a separate bank account, hotel charges, transfers to Lauren, expensive gifts, and money that had quietly disappeared from our shared accounts. They had already started planning their life together, where they would live, what house they would buy, and what would happen to the children after I was gone. Lauren asked, "How long until you can actually leave?" Daniel replied, "Hopefully not much longer." "What does that mean?" "She can't live forever." I saved everything. Then I created multiple backups and sent copies to a private email account. I contacted a lawyer and secured my own finances. I didn't tell anyone. Not my family. Not my friends. When he came home that evening, I acted normally. He kissed me. He asked how I was feeling. I told him I was feeling better. He smiled. I smiled back. Daniel had no idea that I knew what he had been saying about me. He continued texting Lauren. He continued making plans. And I continued pretending that nothing had changed. One night, Lauren asked, "Are you sure she doesn't know?" Daniel replied, "She trusts me completely." Then, "She has cancer. Where is she going to go?" I saved the conversation. A few weeks later, Lauren asked, "What if she finds out?" "She won't." "And if she does?" "What is she going to do?" "She could leave you." Daniel replied, "She has cancer. Where is she going to go?" That was when I decided I wasn't leaving quietly. Daniel had built his entire future on the assumption that I was too sick, too dependent, and too trusting to do anything about what he had done. He was wrong. I made sure my lawyer had the evidence. I documented the finances, I backed up the messages, and I waited. Daniel kept living as if nothing had changed. He kept going to work, kissing me goodbye, and telling me he loved me every morning. I went along with it. The more comfortable he became, the less careful he was. Then Lauren asked, "How much longer?" Daniel replied, "Until she's gone." "You mean until she dies?" "Yes." Then, "I want my life back. And if she gets better, then I'll deal with it." "What does that mean?" "It means I'll find a way to get rid of the problem." I saved the conversation. Then I filed for divorce. Daniel thought I would walk away quietly. He was wrong. He told people that cancer had changed me, that I had become bitter and unstable, and that I had abandoned him after everything he had supposedly done for me. I let him talk. By then, I had already handed every piece of evidence to my lawyer. Daniel had spent years building a reputation as the devoted husband who had sacrificed everything for his sick wife. Now he had to explain why that same devoted husband had been cheating on her, hiding money, and waiting for her to die. The financial investigation uncovered more than I expected. Daniel had been moving money into accounts I didn't know existed. Some of it had gone to Lauren. Some of it had paid for hotels, gifts, and expenses related to their relationship. He had been using money from our marriage to build a separate life with another woman. That changed everything. Daniel had assumed the house would be his. He had assumed he would receive the insurance money if I die, and he could walk away with enough money to start over with Lauren. He had been planning his future with money that wasn't even his yet. None of it went the way he expected. The hidden accounts were discovered. The money transfers were documented. The financial misconduct became part of the divorce proceedings. And the life he had spent years planning started falling apart. The house was sold. The assets were divided. The money he had tried to hide was accounted for. And Daniel didn't get to walk away with everything he had expected. In fact, by the time the divorce was finalized, I had secured everything I was legally entitled to, and a lot more than Daniel thought I would. He had spent years assuming I was too sick to notice what he was doing. He was wrong. Lauren found out about the divorce too. Daniel had promised her that one day we would be over and they would finally be together. He had made her believe I was the only thing standing in their way. So I sent her the messages. Not the messages where he told her he loved her. The other ones. I sent her the messages where he called her needy, complained about her to his friends, and admitted he wasn't even sure he wanted a future with her. She called me. "Why did you send me these?" "Because you should know what you were waiting for." She was silent. Then she asked, "Did he really say all of that?" She started crying. I didn't comfort her. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had known about me. She had known I was sick. And she had still waited for me to die. So I gave her the answer she deserved. "Now you know who you were waiting for." Then I hung up. Their relationship ended shortly after. I didn't care. Lauren was no longer my problem. Daniel was. And I made sure he understood that the divorce wasn't going to be easy. He had spent years treating me like an obstacle between him and the life he wanted. So I stopped making anything easy for him. Every hidden account was investigated. Every suspicious transfer was documented. Every asset was accounted for. Every lie he had told was backed up with evidence. He had wanted a clean start. He didn't get one. He wanted the house. He didn't get to keep it. He wanted the money. He didn't get to hide it. He wanted his reputation. He lost it. And he wanted Lauren. She left him too. By the time the divorce was finalized, Daniel had lost the life he had already planned. The house was gone. The money he had been hiding was accounted for. The affair was no longer a secret. His reputation as a devoted husband was destroyed. And the woman he had spent years promising a future to wanted nothing to do with him. He had planned everything around the idea that I would die. He had imagined the house, the money, the freedom, his mistress. He had already decided what his life would look like without me. The only thing he hadn't planned for was me surviving. And then finding out, Daniel still says he never really wanted me dead. Maybe that's what he tells himself now. I don't care. I read what he wrote. I saw what he planned. And I watched him lie to me every single day while waiting for me to disappear. I don't feel sorry for him. He had spent years planning for the day I would have nothing. So I made sure that when I finally left, I had everything I was legally entitled to. And Daniel? He was left with exactly what he had earned. Nothing more. Nothing less. The divorce was finalized. I kept my share of the assets. I secured my financial future, and Daniel was forced to start over with far less than the life he had been planning. He had wanted me gone so badly that he had already built an entire future without me. Then I survived.